Hey everyone, it's Chrono from the Headphone Show. Today with me I have the new IE900, which was kindly provided to us for review by Sennheiser. Let's check it out. So, a couple of months ago, and starting with the IE300, Sennheiser began to slowly get back into the IEM game by either releasing new products or refreshing prior ones. So what we'll be taking a look at in this review then is the IE900, which was designed to be Sennheiser's new in-ear flagship headphone, and it also was designed to deliver an uncompromised listening experience regardless of where you are or where you go. Of note, it's not actually up for purchase yet, but it will become available in June at the price of $1299.95. But anyways, without further ado, let's start off by checking out the IE900's accessories. Despite its exterior packaging being identical to that of the IE300, the unboxing experience once you get past the outer sleeve is completely different. Inside you'll find a box with a pull-out tab which contains the IE900 as well as its documentation and accessories. For starters, you're greeted with a certificate of authenticity, which has the headphone serial number and a signature from QC inspection. Then there's a tray with 6 different sets of tips, which, like on the IE300, are 3 pairs of silicone tips and 3 pairs of foam tips. Additionally, there are 3 cables included, and whilst they all use semi-recessed MMCX connectors for the headphone side, they have varying terminations. One is a standard single-ended 3.5mm cable, another one is 4.4mm balanced, and the last one is 2.5mm balanced, which gives you some flexibility for connectivity. Last but not least, the IE900 includes a Sennheiser cleaning tool and microfiber cloth, as well as a very portable, low-profile case that includes a plaque with the headphone serial number at the bottom. For its build, the IE900 features the same compact and ergonomic design featured on the IE300 and on Sennheiser's Pro Series IEMs. The only difference here is that the IE900 is milled from a single block of aluminum and has grooves that texture the chassis. Despite the metal housing though, the IE900 remains pretty lightweight and easily portable. For comfort, the IE900 is truly outstanding. The small chassis makes for an IEM that I don't think many users will have issues getting a good fit with, so they're definitely friendly towards users whose ears are on the smaller side. Now, the tips themselves are identical to those on the IE300, so I may sound a bit repetitive when describing them. Like on the IE300, I really like the foam tips that are included with the IE900. They're easy to work with, and they work wonders in getting a good consistent seal that also provides solid noise isolation. On the other hand, I'm still not particularly enthusiastic about the silicone tips included, as I wasn't able to get a proper seal with any of them, which really hurt the tonality of the headphone. Naturally, this will vary greatly from user to user since our ears are shaped differently, so these tips may not be an issue for you, though I still wanted to share my experience with them. Okay, so now let's talk about sound. And the IE900, like other Sennheiser IEMs, is using a single dynamic driver. What Sennheiser has done here that's a little bit different though is that they've introduced their X3R transducer, which basically combines their refined 7mm extra wideband transducer with a triple chamber absorber system. So how does this new acoustic design perform? Well, I know I've given some of my thoughts away in the first look video I made for the IE900, but to briefly recap, I think it sounds rather good. In fact, it's probably the most enjoyable listening experience I've personally had in an IEM thus far. It's not without its flaws, of course, but it's got a very nice presentation that is surprisingly spacious with a good tonality and even great dynamics. Whilst I will say that it immediately struck me as having a slightly bright frequency response, it wasn't particularly offensive or harsh, and it actually had a very good mid-range and low-end response. Alright, so let's talk first about the bass region. There haven't been many yet, admittedly, but of the IEMs I have had the opportunity to listen to, I do think that the IE900 has my favorite bass response. It's got a very generous bass shelf under 120 Hz, which gives the sub-bass region a lot of energy, presence as well as a deep rumble. It wasn't really overbearing though over other frequency ranges, and I just found it to be both enjoyable and clean. It's definitely a tad bit more elevated over what I would consider to be neutral sounding, but again, it just made for a fun bass region, and while the IE900 was very capable at still keeping that bass response very tight and controlled. Additionally, I should mention that like other dynamic driver IEMs, the IE900 has punchy bass tones, and it does have a very satisfying kick as a result. Moving along to the mids, the mid-range on the IE900 is one that I think is accurate, with a tonality and balance that reminds me of the HD100S and the HD560S, two headphones of which mid-ranges I'm fond of. Throughout, the mids are linear, with an organic voicing that keeps the fundamental tones of vocal and instrument lines natural sounding. I did occasionally feel as though maybe 3.5K was just a little bit forward, but then again, I do tend to be fairly sensitive to that region of the upper mid-range, so I don't think that for all listeners that might be any concern. In any case, I think that the IE900 has a very good depiction of the mid-range. Lastly, for frequency response, we have the highs, and it's in the treble range where I think that some listeners might have a bit of trouble with the IE900. As I mentioned earlier, the highs do have a bit of added brightness to them. In the lower to mid treble, it sounded to me as though there was a fairly broad elevation centered around 6K of maybe about 4 to 5 dB, which in combination with a narrower peak at 8.5K, I felt really highlighted the overtones and harmonics in that region, which made for a treble range that did sound ever so slightly unnatural in its brilliance, and it did also introduce some sibilance. Again, this didn't really make the IE900 harsh or piercing in the way that some peaky headphones like the DT1990 Pro are, but I did find that it was just a little bit bright enough to where over extended listening sessions, I could find it a little bit fatiguing or at least a little distracting. This elevation aside though, I still think that the treble range on the IE900 is pretty good. Since the elevation is not narrow, it doesn't stand out or make the highs feel particularly uneven. Additionally, I really appreciate the IE900's excellent treble extension, as it has nice air qualities above 10K that properly nuance the glisten of vocals and the splash of cymbals. Shifting over to technical performance, let's first talk about resolution, and for its detail retrieval and overall sense of clarity, I feel as though the IE900 delivers solid performance for its price range. Even compared to the similarly priced Andromeda, the 2020 version, I feel as though the IE900 actually delivered a cleaner image of the music, with vocal and instrument lines having a very well-defined structure as well as having adequate texturing. Then for soundstage imaging and layering, the IE900 has truly outstanding spatial qualities, and I think that they may just be where it shines brightest. Since it's working with an extremely compacted enclosure, no, it doesn't have the kind of soundstage that an over-ear headphone has, but it's remarkably open sounding and spacious for an IEM, and it delivers a listening experience that honestly feels nowhere near as confined as what I would expect to hear from an in-ear headphone. For imaging, it easily discerns the positioning and directionality of sound, revealing the location of sound cues accurately. Additionally, it's got equally good image distinction and layering. Instrument lines retain their distinction even through busy musical passages, which I also think is something that strongly contributes to the IE900's perceived clarity. Lastly, we have dynamics, and as I mentioned earlier, the IE900's dynamic driver delivers engaging dynamics that heighten the musicality of the listening experience. Low tones are fast and punchy, whilst upper registers have a satisfying bite and defined attack. Overall, the IE900 provides a good sense of tactility that gives instruments a more realistic and energetic presence, and in this regard, it's among the better IEMs I've heard. So if you're looking for an IEM with a good sense of punch and slam, I think that you'll enjoy the IE900. Okay, so now to wrap up this review, the slightly emphasized treble region might be a bit of a put-off for some listeners, but I think that as a whole, the IE900 is a very good IEM. It's one that I've really enjoyed as it delivers excellent technical performance, a good tonality, and great comfort. So undoubtedly, it's a well-rounded IEM that I would gladly recommend. One more thing I should note is that in a high-end market that's continuously steering towards multi-driver and hybrid solutions, the IE900 is an outstanding option for listeners who really enjoy the kind of presentation that a single dynamic driver has. If this is something that, like me, you value in your listening experience, then you may want to keep this one on your short list. Anyways, that is all for me today. I hope you enjoyed this video or found it useful. If you did, do consider dropping a like. And if you'd like to learn more about the IE900 or other headphones, I highly encourage you to check out the review section available on headphones.com, as well as the Headphones community forums where you can interact with other audio enthusiasts. For more headphone audio content, stay tuned by subscribing to the Headphone Show. And until next time, this is Chrono signing off.